Good morning, everyone. This week we studied the portion of Vayeitzei, and we are studying from the book Selections of Likutei Sichos, the first talk of the Rebbe. Just an introduction. This week we start reading about Yaakov, Jacob's journey into Haran, meeting his uncle, his mother's brother, marrying two sisters, marrying the two daughters of Lavan, Rachel and Leah, and creating the house of Israel by fathering many, many children. Towards the end, we read about his running away from Lavan. Lavan is chasing him. God is warning Lavan, and he meets Yaakov, and they make peace, a peace treaty, and now he's getting close to the Holy Land. This is this week's Torah portion. But when Yaakov arrives in Haran, he's a poor man, he's homeless. He had nothing. He only had his staff. Not even his clothes. Not even his clothes. When he returns, he's extremely wealthy. He's probably one of the wealthiest people in the region. As the description just about the gifts that he's giving Esav is so much, so large. And the Torah describes hundreds upon hundreds of servants and maidservants just to serve all his wealth. How does it all start? Where did it all start? This is what the Rebbe is talking about. The Rebbe is going to focus on one commodity, which is described in the Torah as tzon. Tzon refers to sheep. Sheep is where it all started. Some people start their wealth from stock market, and others real estate. A third guy is from savings. Everyone, a startup, everybody will invest where they will become, assuming they become very successful. Yaakov started with tzon. As the Torah describes, says the Rebbe, that he had negotiated, the Rebbe points out, I'm going to read the second paragraph. Thus, Yaakov's property consisted primarily of sheep, and from them he became wealthy. As the Torah describes, says to us, Bereshit, Genesis 30, verse 43, he acquired fertile sheep, and they became a source of wealth for him, and he exchanged these sheep for maidservants, servants, camels, and donkeys. So what started it all? Sheep. And they're the one who gave him the ability to go and barter for camels, oxen, servants, and maidservants. As Rashi comments, he would sell his sheep at a high price and purchase all the above. So if you want to know where did it all started from? Sheep. Yet, says the Rebbe, something is very peculiar. Nevertheless, as related in Parshat Vayishlach next week, when he is meeting his brother, he tells him, when Yaakov instructed his agents to convey a message to Esav, he describes his property in the following order. I have acquired oxen and donkeys, sheep, servants, and maidservants. He mentions sheep after oxen and donkeys, and not as his first and primary acquisition. And the Rebbe says that further down, we see that he's talking always putting sheep when he meets Esav, when he talked to Esav, the exchange, he's only talking about putting sheep last of animals. A deserved understanding. Ali, do you understand the question? Yeah. Says the Rebbe, the following. That everything we read in the Torah is very particular. The following is Kabbalah. You won't find it anywhere else. And it's the Rebbe's chidush, the Rebbe's understanding here. I don't understand how a human being can find it. But it's the Rebbe. The Rebbe says that everything that happens to our forefathers is a sign for us, a lesson. The fact that the Torah described that it started all from sheep. And the Torah tells us also that later on, when he talks to Esav, he puts sheep later, is a sign for us how to live a life. In addition, says the Rebbe, if you look in the Torah, today's section, Thursday, the 5th edition, Esav is asking, how shall I pay you? Because Yaakov, when Yosef is born, his 11th child is born, Yaakov wants to go home because he knows with Yosef he has good luck to fight Esav. So Esav says, please stay. What can I do to keep you? What does Yaakov says? Lavan. So what does he say to him? Separate the sheep and put in all the different color tapestries on the skin, on the wool. Move it away, put it with your children, your sons to shepherd. I will take care of only the solid colors, and everyone that's born with spotting on the legs or on their back is going to be mine. In other words, how does he get paid? With sheep. Sheep is everything that gave him all that he had. It must be a lesson for us. Says the Rebbe. In Medrash Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, there is a Medrash on that, compares the relationship between Jew and God in two ways, like a son bonds with his father, and like the sheep bonding with their shepherd. As the Rebbe, similarly, let's say that there is a need for those two. Why is it that he goes from a stronger bond to a weaker bond? The bond between father and son is very strong. They have similar facial features. He gives them the DNA. He gives them his emotion. He gives them his gene. And therefore, the bond between a father and son is unmistakably, you cannot separate them. It's inseparable. When you compare sheep to the shepherd, there is no comparison. You can talk to the sheep looks at you like a sheep. He has no idea what you're talking about. Also, the sheep is not going to attend Thanksgiving dinner because the sheep he may be at the guest of honor. As pieces, right? So if the author of the Medrash wants to compare the relationship between God and the Jewish people, he should have used like a sheep and a shepherd, and like a son and his father. Make sense, Harry? Okay. Why does he start with father and son, and then he goes to sheep and shepherd, which makes it a much distant relationship? Says the Rebbe that a father and son, there is such great closeness between a father and son that the son is not completely nullified, humbled before his father. The fact that there is such a strong bond makes the son a separate entity. He can question his father. He can argue. He can move away. He can have his own life. He become a complete independent. That's a son versus and compare or bonding with the father. In other words, we call it Seder Ishtalshelus, the ordinary order of chain reaction. You have a father, he fathered the son. Now the son should be humble before his father. The Torah demands that you respect and honor. But the son is a separate entity. The father knows not everything he likes, the son is going to like. Not every time he wants the son around, the son is going to be there. Because the son has his own desires. He may be married. He may have a family. He has his own need. So the relationship is called the orderly chain of relationship. It's called Seder Ishtalshelus in the Kabbalah language. A sheep and a shepherd, there is no relationship between the two. The sheep has many desires and wants and may calculate that they want to graze across the mountain. But the sheep always obeys the shepherd. The sheep's relationship to the shepherd, as the Medrash described, is lemaila miseder ishtalshelus, above and beyond a chain reaction, because there's no relationship. So the only reason the sheep obeys the shepherd is because it is told. There is a boss, and whatever the boss says goes. No questions. There is no place for questioning, and there is no leeway for the sheep to disobey. You disobey the shepherd, you have no right you don't deserve to be around. Is that clear? Dick, do you understand that? So again, to summarize, father and son, albeit they are close, but the closeness creates a chain reaction where the son wants to obey his father, understand his father's needs and wants, and he wants to respect and honor his father, therefore he honors him. That's called Seder Ishtalshelus. Sheep and shepherd, there's no relationship because there's no connection between the two. It's two separate entities. The sheep obeys the shepherd just because it has to. And therefore it's Lemaila Misrael Shalshosh. That's why the Medrash put sheep and shepherd second. It's a much higher degree of relationship because it's a complete nullification. That's why the author of the Medrash compares the relationship between sheep and shepherd, not donkeys, not oxen, not cows, because sheep is among the most humble of animals ever. Therefore, tzon, which is a general term for sheep, is the one describing the Jewish people. Atem tzoni, tzon mariti, you are my sheep. You are my, just a minute. And therefore, sheep and shepherd, the relationship, so to say, is above the chain of reaction, above Seder Ishtalshelut, and therefore it's a much greater, we call it bitul b'mtziut, totally non-existence before God. And even there, God loves the Jewish people. In other words, father and son, when the son obeys his father, brings pleasure to God. If the son disobeys, cause him grief. The son makes a choice, it's called bitul hayesh, and he says, my father is important, I have to respect him and do. So he did it on his own volition, he came to it by his own mind, and it brings pleasure to God. Tzon, sheep, on the other hand, have no idea, has no mind on their own to come to that conclusion. They are completely nullified before the boss, before the shepherd. They know that's their task. And even then, they bring pleasure to God, even at that level. And therefore, tzon, sheep, is a much greater connection, bonding with God, just because mindset is completely vacated. It's not involved in the relationship. Yes, Raja.
No, I was saying the analogy used between the shepherd and the sheep. Is it because the nature of the sheep is to be obedient?
Exactly. Because they are very humble from all other domesticated animals, therefore they are the example that's used all the time to describe the relationship between God and the Jewish people. Okay, you understand that? Says the Rebbe, these two comparison between the relationship of God and the Jewish men can be compared to two types of service of God. Son and father, or sheep and shepherd. Son and father represent the study of Torah. Because when you study Torah, the proper way of studying Torah is to understand what you're studying. If you don't understand, you're missing a big component of the study of Torah. So there are parts of Torah that reading on its own has no achievements. You did not fulfill the mitzvah of studying Torah. In other words, a prerequisite for studying Torah is to be mature enough to understand what you're studying. That is compared to a father and son. God gave us a Torah, he's the father, I'm the son. And therefore the relationship is called Seder Ishtalshelus. I study the Torah, I understand the Torah, and now I'm serving God by studying the Torah because he commanded us to study Torah and understand. Clear, right? Sheep and shepherd represent the serving of God through the mitzvot. Do I need to understand the mitzvah before I perform it? The answer is no. It's not a prerequisite. It's not a condition. You serve God by eating matzah, by observing Shabbat, by telling the truth, by not lying, by not stealing. Do I know why? Of course you should try, but that's not what the relationship is based on. The relationship is based on serving God, action, bringing the universe closer to God by utilizing every part of the universe for God's sake. That's called a sheep and a shepherd. I'm a shepsele. I am a small herd, part of a herd, and well, what the shepherd says, now you go back to the barn. Now you're going to graze on this side because you need someone to mow the grass. I cannot ask questions. And by the way, a good shepherd will, as King David was a great shepherd, a faithful shepherd, he would take in the elders first because they did not have proper teeth. Anybody is familiar with that? Then he would take them back and bring in the young, and then he'll bring the teenagers because they can climb up, they had strong teeth, so they were able to eat the harsher part of the grazing of the plants. In other words, a sheep cannot ask questions. When you serve God with mitzvot, it reaches deeper because it's the level of Lemaila Miseder Rishalshu, above the chain reaction of God versus human. Because the first one, study of Torah, if you don't use your mind and question it and make sure you understand, you did not serve God. And mitzvot, you don't have to understand. If someone forces you to serve God, ties you down to a chair for the whole Shabbat, and you are unable to violate Shabbat, you serve God on that Shabbat. As the Rabbi Chadakov told, somebody from Israel came to Rabbi Chadakov and complained about the violation of Shabbat in Israel. Rabbi Chadakov is a chief secretary of the Rebbe. He says, I don't understand why you making an issue, because on Shabbat, let's analyze what a person does on Shabbat. And he came up with the idea that 2/3 of the day, either he's sleeping, a person is sleeping, 7-8 hours, or he is eating, or he's socializing. During that time, the man is serving God, he's observing Shabbat. So what's left? The few times when he goes out of the house and in, or when he turns the TV and out, he says this is a very small part of the day. Majority of the day he keeps Shabbat. So why are you concentrating on the smaller part? In other words, the idea, this is the Rebbe, the idea that serving God out of no common sense, I don't understand why, is a much deeper level of nullification and respect to God, and therefore it's a much higher, it's compared or represented with sheep and shepherd. So to summarize, before I address your question, father and son level of relationship with God represent common sense and using my mind, and therefore it is represented through the study of Torah. Sheep and shepherd, there is no common sense there, it's just obeying God, is represented through the observance of the commandments in the universe. Yes, Dick?
Yom Hadin, the concept that we are sheep passing under the staff of the shepherd.
So
because you talk about
exactly. So that's why you will see the comparison of the Jewish people and God to a sheep and shepherd. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, says the Rebbe, that's why now we can understand everything all the questions, but there is more details. In Toldot, last week's Torah portion, we read about Yaakov, Ish Tam, a simple man, Yoshev Ohalim, study in the tents of Shem and Ever, study Torah. He was studying Torah. At that time, what type of a relationship he had with God? Father and son. Remember study of Torah?
Yeah.
Now that in this week he's going out, Vayeitzei Yaakov, he goes out of the tent. Where he's going out to? Haran. Haran is the worst place in the universe at the time. All the defilement and disobedience of God lived in that place. So therefore he goes the total opposite. He studied for 14 years in yeshiva, and prior to that for many years, at least 50 years, he studied in yeshiva. In yeshiva you have a relationship with God, but it's a relationship of father and son. You have to study and understand. When you go out to Haran, married Lavan, you are going out to the universe. So therefore, by serving God, now the serving of God has elevated to a much higher level, which is
he's
going to become a shepherd. That's why the main source of income for Yaakov, and from that he bartered for everything else, is about sheep, because he needed to, because his service of God at that time was to steadfast, not learn from the community or his father-in-law, and raise a family, a beautiful family that all serve God. He was successful in the worst place you can imagine to raise a beautiful family. He was connected to God. If he would be studying Torah, father and son, we fear that he would be unsuccessful. Only when he goes out of his comfort zone and he becomes a sheep, that's represented by acquiring his wealth through sheep. Now his relationship with God is so strong and it's unwavering that he was able to influence his family, Rachel and Leah, Bilhah and Zilpah, all his sons. Yes.
It's going to be a close question, but he promised God 10% of everything he had.
Right.
In immensely wealth. Who did he give it to? The Levium, people in Israel, Canaan. What happened to 10% of Masa?
So first, part of the punishment, some say the punishment of Dinah getting abused is because he delayed his paying the master. When he entered the Holy Land, he paid the master, I believe, to the yeshiva of Aver. Shem already died at that time.
So he made them immensely wealthy also.
He gave them 10%, yes. Back to our discussion. So says the Rebbe, in Toldot, last week, he was a son father. In this week, he's what? A sheep and shepherd. Next week, we study about his first preparation for the encounter with Esau. What does he say to Esau? He puts sheep last. Vayili, and I acquired, shor v'chamor, oxen and donkeys, tzon, sheep, ve'eved ve'shifcha, and servant and maidservant. In the animal order, suddenly sheep is the last one. And we ask, why is it the last? It should be the primary source, so it should be first. Says the Rebbe, in order for you to meet an arch enemy like Esau, you're not allowed to be completely nullified. You have to stand up for your rights and be proud of your relationship with God. Therefore, the idea of nullification to the level of tzon, of shepherd, of sheep, has to be pushed away. Ox, what is an ox? Ox has a mind of his own. Sometimes they get mad and they're very dangerous, right? They get aggressive, uncontrollable. It's very dangerous. Donkeys is the same thing. They are one of the traits of a donkey is very stubborn, a stubborn animal. In other words, you have to stay up and use all your energy to fight Esau, and therefore nullification does not exist. The Rebbe goes on to say that that's why there must be a mixture of each in every one. There needs to be a total nullification when you are in a sheep mode, serving God in the commandments outside your home. And there must be also the level of complete nullification when you study Torah, because if you study Torah without nullifying or humbling yourself before God, the Torah becomes poison, not something that brings energy. That's why, says the Rebbe, that's why he needed to convert the sheep that he earned into ox and donkeys. You can ask, why does he need oxen and donkeys? You have sheep, right? The wealth comes from there. Why diversify? If you diversify, you take a bigger chance. If you know that it's a sure success, if you have a stock that you know there is no doubt that it will always get better, why diversify? And the answer is, it comes to remind us that even when you're out there, you need to be have the level of nullification. And when you study of Torah, you need not let go of the level of sheep, which is, when you are studying Torah, you need to have the level of son and father, meaning you need to understand common sense, etc. This is when you're outside. When you study in the yeshiva and you are using a father and son, have the other trait of animals. Did you understand that, or I can't?
I think you said B2 has to be involved in the mitzvahs, but not so much in this Torah study. And now you're saying B2 has to be
I said a little ingredient must be. That's why he mixed his assets and he purchased ox and donkey to diversify. Says the Rebbe, when you study Torah, you need to use intelligence. You have no nullification. You need to understand.
that.
Part of it must be mixed with a small ingredient of nullification
Okay.
of a sheep. And when you're outside, you are a sheep, meaning you have total nullification because you're serving God without any questioning. You also need to use common sense and be at the level of son outdoors as well. That explains now why in Toldot it's all about father and son. In Vayeitzei, it's all about sheep and shepherd. In Vayishlach, it goes back to father and son. He puts sheep last from the animals because you need to have a common sense and warn them that you are going there and it's not worth it. Dick, did you have a question?
Well, comment, when you're presenting yourself to your adversary, you do it with strength.
What?
You present yourself to your adversary.
That's
you
exactly
show
the
your
point.
strength.
That's exactly.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yaakov didn't listen to my